Hello, my name is Josh Pugh. This is for COMS 542, the informative speech, where I'll be talking the generation of entitlement is my subject. For my audience, I will pose as my church leaders. I have my lovely wife, Sydney, who is right there. Make yourself known. Say hi.
Hi.
So she will be posing as the audience that I explain this subject, generation of entitlement. I know you can't see it necessarily on the screen, but for the purposes of explaining it and so the audience can see it, I have it up here and I will upload it. So along with this speech, you'll be able to follow along. Starting slide 1, let's talk about the preview. I want to talk about the current climate of the generation of entitlement, which is roughly in the late 70s to mid 90s, is considered the generation of entitlement. But for my purposes, I kind of cluttered together all youths at this point. So basically, if you're 30 years old or below, I put you in this group. I also will be talking about contributing factors, why this is so common, why it has occurred and developed over the years, kind of what it looks like. I also want to talk about where we're headed, what the results of the generation of entitlement will show in the future in America specifically. We're already seeing some of the results of the generation of entitlement, and lastly, God's word on the subject of entitlement. Current climate. It's pretty obvious to see the current climate. It's basically on the news every day. Fox, somebody protesting about somebody else's protest that they don't like about, so they protest about that. It's just a never-ending back and forth of I'm right, you're wrong. And one of the reasons why this is so prevalent and kind of where I put it together is there's a rejection of authority and a celebration of rebellion in society. It's cool to fight the man, as so to speak, in government or any authority in police. Their authority is now seen as the bad guy, and people are trying to rise up and fight against, and sometimes they don't even know what they're fighting against. They just say they're fighting against the authority. So what's contributing to the generation of entitlement starts with a rejection of authority, and that's kind of the current climate, what I'm looking at. I also see, especially in my generation, but also in the younger generation to follow, is a you owe me attitude, whereas they expect things. They expect presents. They expect mom and dad to buy them these things, and if they can't, they feel cheated. Instead of earning it, instead of working hard, which was the foundation of America, the foundation of what it looks like to follow biblical truths is you work hard and labor and you reap what you sow type of attitude. It's a you owe me. I jokingly said in the third point, patience is evidently not a virtue. We have been described as a microwave society where if it's not instantly gratified, we get upset. And this entitlement of now, this is extremely contributed through the smartphone and the internet, where pretty much any information is at the tip of your fingers, and if it takes longer than 30 seconds, we give up on it, honestly. Truthfully, when you look up on the internet and just that smartphone, or I like to call it the microwave generation because it's a good visual of just pushing a button and getting something cooked. And lastly, to never deny self has contributed to the generation of entitlement, meaning that we don't like to say no to our desires. If we think we want it, or it might change that day, but if we think we want it, we're going to buy it. And even if we don't have the sufficient funds to purchase it, we're going to try to get it. That is huge in our society, and that's why debt, and our government is in trillions of dollars of debt, which is kind of generated down to the mindset of this generation of entitlement that if we can't afford it, we're still going to buy it, but we'll just pay it down the line. It's not, and it adds up, and it just contributes to this attitude and aura of entitlement that is plagued, and why people get so fed up with the next generation and their just attitude. Next slide is contributing factors. First point is a world where everyone is a winner breeds entitlement. What I wanted to talk about here is specifically in sports. where kids go play soccer and everybody gets a trophy. And in real life, we know that just doesn't work. Sometimes you lose in life, and that's not necessarily taught. And why it's so important is that it's ingrained from a young age that they have the right to be called a winner, even though they don't win. And I think that definitely doesn't help in the long run, because it eliminates the need to get better and to strengthen talents and abilities that God has blessed us with. And that's why when everyone a winner, it breeds entitlement. Truth is relative, so why am I not right? This I can go on for probably 20 minutes, but I'll try to keep it short. When truth is relative, nothing is wrong, truthfully, and we see that in courts, we see that on social media, we see that in every walk of life. When truth is dependent on the person and there's not an absolute truth that oversees and gives the power to all other truths, everything is fair game and it's chaos, really. And I think it's so funny that people pick and choose what truth they're going to consider as absolute and cannot be considered, you cannot talk about it. But there's others where I can do this and it'd be okay. And what this does is it creates I'm right all the time, how can you tell me I'm wrong? Because maybe it's not true, but it is true for me, so it's true. And even saying that out loud, it's just idiocy, me saying it. And I just don't understand how, when people can see when truth is relative, how one, it breeds just an entitlement and an arrogance, but it's just wrong. Next, affluence leads to despondence. America has been super blessed. God has blessed us, and we're not like the rest of the world, and we feel that we can go out and we're going to be America, and we're going to get all this money, and just a sense of greed and unthankfulness because God has blessed America so much, so we don't have that gratefulness for what God has blessed us with. Lastly, materialism and self-identity crisis. We are super materialistic, especially the younger generation. We want the newest gadget. I personally have an iPhone 5, and I'm happy as anyone can be having a phone, but there's some people that honestly, if they don't have the newest phone, they feel left out, they feel not as valued, and it just doesn't make sense. So they need that thing to feel, to help their identity, and that's the next point, self-identity crisis, that if you're not on a certain status, you're seen as less valuable. So when you're materialistic and need these things to fuel your identity, that's an entitlement. I need these things to help me and make me feel better. So I want to go to the next slide, which is where we're headed. And it's a scary place when you look on Fox News and you see college universities and just the anarchy that's developed and just the attitude of entitlement that is just leaving universities and going across the country. The first point is there's no right and wrong, just depends on the person. Going back to truth is relative, I think there's going to be a point where everything can be argued in court, where just depending on the word usage that they use, they can be right and wrong. It's just everything can be questioned, and that's what is entitled about that. Government dependency and a liberal mindset. When you're entitled, you feel like you're owed something, so it goes along with a liberal mindset that is dependent on the government. I'm not trying to get political, but in the foundation of Democrats, it's where there's a bigger government, and that just contributes to that generation of entitlement. Debt will continue to grow. There will be financial difficulties, and lastly, an attack on marriage will continue because they want to be fulfilled in any way that gratifies themselves, not necessarily their mate. I want to talk quick verses. John 14:6, Jesus said to them, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Talking about relative truth, Jesus is the source of our truth. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. We need to get them while we're young, as far as like teaching them foundational truths from God's Word that will read good things. And lastly, Ephesians 2:8-9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is a gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one can boast. We need to learn a dependency on Christ and what he can teach us, so we do not have that entitled mindset that's all about me, but it's more about the grace that is given through Christ. And I want to thank Sydney and my audience for listening, and God bless. Maybe it's this one.